you so much. That's a lot to live up to, so thanks for setting the stage. Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Good morning. I am energized, so I need you to match my energy this morning. Excellent. So thank you for spending this time with me. Let's see. Nope. Am I going backwards here? Okay. Excellent. Okay. There are two green buttons, you all. So today we're going to talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion. Now, when you hear about diversity, equity, and inclusion, is there anyone in here that just wants to go and hide? Is there anyone who's afraid of saying the wrong thing, getting it wrong, or even feel like you are the object of the conversation or the problem? I know I have conversations with many people in Mainframe, at Rocket, who have these similar concerns. So what we're going to do today, in the time that we have together, we're going to demystify some of this, really understand that this is for everyone. This is everyone's work. This is including everyone, and walk away with some really practical things to do. Because I know that's often a question, Sharra, well, where do I get started? So today, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my journey. Because I think with this work, it's really important that we understand the practitioner, who they are, how they got to be where they are. Because this is not just a job for me or head work. This is heart work, and this is actually who I am. So I want to tell you a little bit about my journey. And then we're going to go into some very high-level definitions around DEI, because that's a big question that I get. Sharra, what are you even talking about? And let's get on the same page with our language. How it creates value. You know, we hear the buzz about DEI, but how does it actually create value for the mainframe, for your life, and for the industry? And then we're going to identify some gaps, and then we're going to identify some bridges. So this is the practical piece that I was telling you about. And then we're going to ignite some sparks. Right? How we can go back to our organizations and actually make a difference. So this is who I am. I've bookended my pillars on this picture. The woman there to the left, that gorgeous woman, is my mom. She is my pillar, my soulmate, and has really been critical in developing who I am. The man on the right, that's my dad. That's my daddy. I lost him in January of this year. He was my inspiration. He was my superhero. And this picture really depicts the relationship that we had throughout my lifetime. My dad, from the Deep South, black man from the Deep South in Alabama, left Alabama, moved to Boston, went on to Harvard, and then became the first black state senator in Massachusetts. And on that journey, I was able to witness firsthand how he was in the community, breaking down barriers in the State House, on the campaign trail, opening up opportunity, making sure folks were included, particularly those who had been historically excluded. And I saw how he cared, how passionate he was. Regardless of the room he was in, he was always himself, and he was always authentic. And so he inspired me to be where I am today, to really focus on opening up those barriers, really breaking down walls for those who are marginalized, and really making room for everyone. And then in the middle, That's my family. That's my wife and my daughter. So you can see that in my life and how I navigate the world, there are many intersections, right, in who I am. So this diversity, equity, and inclusion, I live it every day, and it is my passion. It is who I am. So Sharra, what is diversity, equity, inclusion? I've added on a letter there. The B stands for belonging. So for the purposes of today, we're going to talk about diversity. It is a fact. You've seen, I've shared a little bit about my story and about who I am. I'm a black woman. I have a wife. I'm a mom. Those are the intersections of who I am. Those are just facts. Equity, and we'll get into this a little bit. Equity is a choice. So think about this within your organization's choice to provide access and opportunity for everyone. Inclusion is an action. You actually have to make the invitation to invite people in, to help them to understand that their unique perspectives are actually valued. And so belonging is the outcome when you have diversity, equity, inclusion in place. And we're going to explore this a little bit more so we can put it all together. The outcome of that is belonging, where people can find belonging in your organizations. So how does this actually create value? We hear so much about diversity, equity, inclusion. How does it create value? Well, first of all, it's the right thing to do. We have these words that I've been talking about, diversity, equity, inclusion. And if you can see here on the diagram, belonging is in the middle. So here's something that a lot of organizations are doing now. They're talking about, oh, we have to become more diverse. And yes, that is critical. And no, this is not at the expense of other people. I think people become fearful. This is many of the organizations that, or people that I talk to. Well, what does that mean for me when we become more diverse? But what we need to acknowledge and recognize and work to do is first, within our organizations, start to think about equity. Equity is essentially looking at our policies, our processes, our procedures, and look at them from a lens of, is this providing access and opportunity for everyone in our organization, not just for a few? And so when you have equity in your organization, that provides and opens up opportunities for inclusion. People are going to feel included if they feel like things are fair. And then that's when the diversity part comes, because people will look at your organization, understand that you're paying attention to equity. There's room for inclusion, so they're going to want to come because they will be able to find a place of belonging. And we'll go into what happens when you have belonging in your organization. But if that doesn't convince you that it's the right thing to do, we can look at the facts around the bottom line, right? We're all working for organizations to make money. Our organizations are looking to make money. So the bottom line is McKinsey has been doing these studies for years and years, over a decade, countries across the globe, hundreds of companies, and they look at the executive leadership, senior leadership within the organizations. And what they have found, when there is gender diversity, those companies are outperforming those companies who don't have the gender diversity in their executive and senior leaderships. We're talking about financially outperforming them. And then, if you look at executive leadership, senior leadership, and see that it's diverse ethnically and racially, those companies are outperforming those by 35%. We're talking about financial bottom line outperformance. And so what you get with this diversity, and remember, we have to look at the equity and inclusion first with our organization. We can't just say we're going to be diverse and suddenly we're going to start making all this money, right? Or suddenly we're going to be making better decisions, or people are going to be more innovative and more engaged. That's not, we have to start there with that piece and add the diversity, and then we will reap these benefits. And I'll go back to that again. That is where companies make mistake. Oh, let's get more diversity in our organizations. But what do we think about retaining those people? We can't just invite people into our organizations and not have the environment for people to thrive. So we're going to look at 3 gaps today. Just 3. There are many, but let's just tackle 3 today. And one of the gaps is the power gap. Anybody heard of the power gap? Some people, you might hear language kind of like pay inequity, wage disparity, this kind of thing. And so really what we're talking about in the power gap is the disparity between pay between white men, women of color, and really everybody else, people of color, in organizations across corporate America. And this includes our industry, the mainframe industry. So let's look at the last column there, right, for the C-suite. White men are overrepresented in the C-suite. We have in the US, white men represent roughly about 37% of the population. Yet, we see that they represent 62% of the C-suite. Now let's go all the way down. We see white women, 20%. Let's go all the way down to women of color, 4%. So that's all women of color. We're talking about black women, Latina, indigenous women, Asian women, and black women represent roughly 7%, Latina women roughly 9%, Asian 3%. So we're talking about all of them together represent 4% of the C-suite. Broken rung. Why is this happening? We have overrepresentation and underrepresentation. This is what a typical woman, well, you see on the left, no, I guess it's, yeah, on the left, a rung that is representative of a woman's ladder, sort of that career ladder. And there's a phenomenon called broken ladder. And generally, what we've been talking about across industries, and this is in the mainframe, and particularly exasperated in technology, is that at that first level of manager, women are not able or are not being promoted. And why is that? This is information I want us to interrogate and go back to our organizations, look at the data. Are women being overlooked? Are there informal networks and sponsorship that men have that women don't have access to? This is that equity piece we were talking about. Why is it that women are not making it to the manager level? For every 52 women promoted to be manager, 100 men are. But we're each roughly about half of the population. Why is that? this is our first step in helping to close that gap, right? Look at the women in our organization and what can we do? Are we biased? Are women not as technical? Do we ever hear that coming up in conversations? So this is how we bridge it. We look at the data, right? We share it with other people. Men, I'm talking to you. This is not the job of women. It is also the job of women, right? But men and women together need to come together and really understand who's on your team and why is that person being promoted and not that other person. So these are things to really pay attention to. Why is that person always given the stretch projects? Is it because that person talks more in meetings? These are the things that we need, the nuances that we need to pay attention to. We need to fix that broken rung, and that's what I've been doing at Rocket and looking at why aren't women being promoted at the same rate as men within our organizations. So that's something very practical to do. Look at the data, interrogate, check your biases. The second gap, Black women. We talked about the rate of women of color not making it to the C-suite. Black women are one of the most marginalized people in the United States. When we account for race and gender, Black women make up roughly 64% of bachelor's degrees, 71% of master's degrees, and about 66% of STEM-related doctoral degrees. Oftentimes, companies talk about the talent isn't there. What are we doing? Are we doing things differently? Are we expecting that we're reaching out to the same organizations, the same universities, talking to the same people, and expecting different results? The talent is out there. How do we bridge this? Open up our networks and our opportunities. You know, there are many organizations have become interested in and exploring new opportunities like HBCUs, historically Black colleges and universities. They have engineering programs, STEM-related programs. Look at organizations where people are gathering, Black women, people of color. Reach out to these organizations. And this is not just for talent acquisition. This is also for managers, if you're a manager in your organization. That's how you bridge the gap. That's number 2. Okay, this is something that's really practical and each one of us can do as we walk away today. Stop using the word diverse when you're talking about an individual. We can all do this and bring this back to our organizations, and I'll explain why. But first, I want to share this quote by Edward de Bono. He's a man who thinks a lot about thinking and thinks that kids should be taking classes about thinking. And this is what he had to say. In a sense, words are encyclopedias of ignorance because they freeze perceptions at one moment in history and then insist we continue to use these frozen perceptions when we should be doing better. So when we use the word diverse, this is what I want us to do. I want us to dismantle it, stop it, implode, and start over. And here's why. We all do it. We do it in the industry. We do it in our organizations. We'll say, oh, we have a diverse hire. We have a diverse candidate. And the reason this is so damaging, think about it. That word is loaded when you talk about diverse and assign that to a person. Oftentimes, the connotation of quota, compliance, less competent is associated with that. And think about diverse too and what it means. At the center is a white, male, cisgendered, heterosexual, able-bodied man, right? That person is at the center. And everybody else is diverse. Think about that for a second. So how damaging is that for the person showing up? I, as a black woman, if I'm labeled as a diverse hire, all of that loaded stuff is with me. And it's also for the organization and folks in the organization and the perceptions, the connotations that go along with that. And does that even give the relationship a fair start? So what I want us to do is stop using it when we're talking about an individual, right? Of course, we have a diverse group of people here, right? My background is diverse. You know, all of that, absolutely, let's continue to use. It's a beautiful word, right? But we can actually say black woman. I know that's scary for people sometimes, or African American woman. We can say Latina. It's okay to use the words that people identify as. We don't have to shy away from that. We can use words like underrepresented, historically marginalized, minoritized. These are some of the words that we can use. So we've talked a lot today about diversity, equity, inclusion. We identified 3 gaps, and there are many. And we also talked about the bridges, what we can actually do. So we can go back to our organization and spark that change. Start talking about, let's see the data, let's look at it. What do our women versus men look like in terms of promotions? And what can we do? We cannot make changes. We cannot close that gap until we start talking about it. We can stop using diverse when we're talking about one person. We can stop using excuses of we don't have talent. We're trying to expand our talent pools, but we can't find the talent. We do. Do something different. Go back to your organizations. Spark that change. Ignite it. Have the conversations. And until next time, we'll come back with 3 more and identify the gaps and bridges. Are there any questions? Do I have time for questions? Not really?
Not really.
Okay. We'll come to the luncheon. Today we're going to further the conversation, hopefully get deeper into it. Thank you, everyone.